Welcome to the revolution.
If you don't know what Terminalist is the #1 show on Amazon Prime right now. And it's a show about a Navy SEAL. It's actually from a book written by Carr. I forget his first name. We'll know here in just a second when I start this video. But it's a book called The Terminalist, and Chris Pratt is the lead in this show. And it's about a Navy SEAL, and there'll be a little bit of spoiler alerts here. So if you're in the middle of watching the first 3 or 4 episodes, maybe the first 3 episodes, skip ahead maybe a couple minutes. But basically it's about a Navy SEAL who has his family, spoiler alert, right? 3, 2, 1. His family get murdered. Sorry if you're still listening to this. His family gets murdered, and he finds out that he has a brain tumor, and his entirety of his Navy SEAL team gets murdered in a mission that they were on. And he finds out that it was due to a corporation that was basically giving soldiers medication that was supposed to help block their PTSD, and that gave him a brain tumor. And in order to try and wipe the slate clean and, not have anybody come out and speak out against this drug that's basically happening between, being sold to these businesses, they, basically kill all of the Navy SEALs and try to kill them off so there's no evidence. Okay? There's the premise. Now, the company that is the one that funded the pharmaceutical medications is like a big, huge conglomerate that owns every company ever and just does these investment deals between them. And this is where it gets interesting. So Rotten Tomatoes gave a rating to the Terminalist of like a 30% rating, which if you know Rotten Tomatoes and you follow the actual rating systems, usually falls pretty in line, at least in some cases, with the audience score. In this case, the audience gave it like a 95% rating, 96%, I think, last time I checked. And we'll talk about why that's interesting and what might be the cause behind that. But first, we'll actually look at the author talking on Fox News to Tucker Carlson around what he believes is going on there and why. And here we go.
Think of Amazon, pretty cool that they made it. Terminalist is based, of course, on a best-selling book by Jack Carr. He's one of the executive producers. He's a former Navy SEAL, one of the best-selling novelists in America, one of the good guys. Jack Carr, thanks so much for coming on. So it must please, first of all, congratulations on the book, the many books, this show, but it must please you in a way. Not all viewers hate it, or not all critics hate it, but viewers like it much more than critics. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it falls right in line with everything that I understand about the current culture and climate in America right now. And it seems to have triggered quite a few of these critics. And I have a couple examples here. Daily Beast titled their review, "The Terminalist is an unhinged right-wing revenge fantasy," which is odd because right, left, conservative, liberal are not even mentioned in the show. But I think it may be because the protagonist is competent with weapons and tactics. He's strong. He holds those in power accountable. And that can be unsettling for some, particularly some maybe senior members of the military who have failed upwards over the last 20 years. They go on to write, "There is some serious danger to the Terminalist pandering to red state viewers with routine references to beer, guns, country music, and hunting." The Daily Beast does not like those things. It does not sound like it is much fun over there. But the 95% viewer rating, audience rating, makes it all worth it. We didn't make it for the critics. We made it for those in the arena. We made it for the soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine that went downrange to Iraq and Afghanistan so they could sit on the couch and say, hey, these guys put in the work. They put in the effort to make something special and make a show that speaks to them. And that 95% rating lets me know that we at least got close. And then one more line here. It's from TV Line. It says, "The fugitive meets SEAL team meets a Don't Tread on Me truck decal. We're served up huge helpings of red meat masculinity and lots of American flags." They don't like American flags over there. Game Rant even cites Revolutionary War era Don't Tread on Me flags as a negative. So it's odd that both Game Rants and TV Line had to go back to the 1700s to take the side of the British in their reviews, I found.
I thought that was hilarious. They had to go back to take the side of the British because it meets the "don't tread on me" thing. I don't know. I thought that was funny. So what this is, again, this is a conversation between Jack Carr, who's the writer of The Terminalist, discussing why he believes it got the ratings that he did. Now, he discusses a little bit in there, which is challenging the powers that be in large corporate organizations. And that is exactly why I think Rotten Tomatoes gave this the rating that it has. And I think it has a lot more to do with who owns Rotten Tomatoes and the similarities between the types of things that that company does and what's actually going on in this show here, which I find to be interesting. But again, we'll discuss that in one more minute. We have 30 seconds left in this clip, and then we'll continue on and discuss the actual reason why I think the Terminalist is getting the ratings that it is, because I think it's a lot deeper than what Jack Carr is actually alluding to here.
That quite telling. But someone wrote a horrible review of one of my latest novel, In the Blood, and they said something along the lines of, what do you even call a book like this? And you call it a #1 New York Times best-selling novel, and someone wrote the same thing about this show, and you call that the #1 series on Prime Video.
All right, so that is all we will listen to on that. Now, here is my theory around why I believe that the Terminalist got the ratings that it did. Now, if you know the show of the Terminalist, it's about a large owning corporate investment company that invests in smaller companies who is the powers that be, right? The deep state. And what ends up happening here is the same type of company that they're alluding to causing these soldiers' deaths that this man is going after is the same one that owns Rotten Tomatoes. If you know who Rotten Tomatoes is owned by, it's Comcast. Okay? Now, Comcast is not the big bad wolf. I'm sure in some senses it might be. But who owns Comcast, right? And you usually have to go 2 levels high because they have some type of hierarchy here. So the owner of Comcast is, I want you to take a guess, starts with a black and ends with a rock. And the other highest owner of Comcast is Vanguard. So the same companies that are a part of the military industrial complex, a part of the pharmaceutical industry, a part of the same people who are testing drugs on our military members, also so happens to own the critiquing companies that critique the movies that this show is talking about, these same type of organizations. So I think the reason that this got critiques that it did, the reason that these critics are going after the Terminalist is not only the fact that Chris Pratt is basically the only conservative that's out there, but B, the fact that BlackRock and Vanguard are the very companies that this fictional book is alluding to having these types of powers and doing these types of things. Now, if you were the owner of BlackRock and Vanguard and you wanted to eliminate the possibility that the general population wakes up to the idea that there's large conglomerate, multinational, multi-trillion-dollar companies owned by royalty and old money and the Rothschilds and all these, deep state individuals and George Soroses of the world, those same individuals are the ones that this show is talking about going after for doing the types of things that these very companies like BlackRock and Vanguard do. They own the pharmaceutical companies. They own the movie critics. They own the companies that actually release the films. And in this case, they weren't able to get their hands on it, which, to me is in some way telling of, I guess it is on Amazon. So maybe, Amazon is actually also owned by BlackRock. So maybe that's an easy way of saying that maybe not the case. But it seems to me like this absolutely has to be a hit job on the idea that this show is pushing, which is that there's these large monopoly companies that own everybody and everything, and they literally assassinate people for profit, which we 100% can conclude happens in the world, right? For if you are that naive that you don't think corporations are killing people so that they can continue to profit, whether in one way or another, directly with assassinations, or by, just poisoning the general population, both physically and mentally with the types of, propaganda that they push, then you are naive. But I think that's the real reason. I also think another reason that they're going after Chris Pratt is because he's literally the only conservative-ish type of actor in Hollywood. And this movie or show has to do with guns and weapons and, like he said, hunting and all of these, what is that? Revenge porn, conservative, extreme right-wing ideas like hunting. So apparently that just rubbed the critics the wrong way. But I think it more so has to do with who actually owns Rotten Tomatoes, which is Comcast, which is owned by BlackRock and Vanguard. So there's my theory. Take it or leave it, but you should go watch The Terminalist. I think it's a really interesting, I think it's probably some of Chris Pratt's best acting, which maybe, generally speaking, he's not the greatest, method actor in the world, but he seems to have taken this very seriously. And what Jack Carr does in this show that I appreciate is he talks about how they took a specific aim in this show, wanting to go about it in a way that the veterans, the special forces individuals that are out there that have conducted these missions, watch it and go, yes, That is exactly, how I think that would play down. The tactics that they use, the military jargon and abbreviations that seem to be half of the words that you use in the military is very prevalent. But I definitely think that plays into it. And I also think that the fact that, they're owned by the very companies that this show is waking people up to existing also has to do with it. But it has 95% by the audience. 95% score, which is, again, obviously pretty damn close to the highest score you can get. And then the critics give it a 30%. If you watch I've watched some shitty movies out there, and they didn't get 30%. And The Terminalist is not one of those shows. You can not like the content. You can say that it's, revenge porn, which it's literally a show about somebody who gets his family murdered after being in the military and then goes after the people who murdered his family. It's fiction. It's not real, just in case you guys were curious at Rotten Tomatoes. But it's interesting the fact that the critics gave it such a low score when the audience believes that the acting, the show itself, everything about it was really well done, which I agree with, including the fact that there was a ton of Navy SEALs who were on set with this. Chris Pratt did a ton of training. I think he went to Tarrant Tactical in LA and did their courses and learned how to clear rooms and learned how to act properly in these situations, and said that it was an opportunity for him to really step up his acting. And I think that he really did accomplish that. I think it's a great show. You should if you haven't started watching it yet, you should. I really think it's a good show. If you don't like violence, then maybe it's not the show for you. But at the same time that these critics are praising shows that are out there that are very, very gory, Terminalist has a couple spots that are a little rough, but overall, it's a very, very well done show. I don't see any reason that the critics should do that, other than my theory, which is that, George Soros did it. Not exactly, but kind of.